Welcome back to another Gaming Memories video. Here we are taking a look at Tokyo Highway Battle, a game that was actually released back in 1996 for the Sony PlayStation. And this one here is a little bit different in terms of the types of racing games that you usually expect on the platform back in those days, as there was a lot of racing games that originally created and released for the PlayStation in Japan that never seen outside of that region. And this was one of those racers that actually did. It was released in not only Japan, but was also released in America and in Europe. So we got to experience what it was like to actually play a proper Japanese type of racing game, based off Japanese racing on Japanese highways and so forth. So again, when you go in to play the game, just looking at it here, straight away it very quickly reminds you of the Ridge Racer series, especially the earlier type of Ridge Racer games from Namco. If you haven't actually seen those games or know what they look like, etc., they're actually really good games to play. The pure arcade, and they're a bit more pick up and play and just casual type of games. So I'll leave links in the description so that you can check them out if you want to see them as well. With this one here now, it has kind of the same type of concept, but again, the emphasis more on this here is obviously more so street racing, because as you can see here, you've actually got cars and stuff that you have to avoid. You're racing on Japanese kind of highway roads as well, like motorways and so forth. And instantly it feels very like Ridge Racer, but it's slightly different in terms of especially the cars that you use starting off. It's not as get up and go or as quick to play compared to the likes of Ridge Racer. As if you've played those games, all the cars in Ridge Racer, regardless of even the handling mechanics, the cars are very fast. The game in general just feels very fast. When you start off in this game, essentially you start off with the lower end cars. You've even got proper models of cars, like you've the Toyota Corolla 86 to E86, and you have a Honda Civic, and among other well-known branded cars. And then eventually, as you unlock other tracks and other types of cars, you eventually be able to go on to bigger, more powerful cars like the Nissan Skyline, Toyota Supra and so forth, which back in the 90s they would have been classed as the powerhouses of supercars pretty much, especially in Japan back in those days, as they were and still are highly desirable cars. So as you're playing through the game, I will admit it does feel very like Ridge Racer, but it does have different aesthetics to it, as it definitely is one of the earlier games to adopt of upgrade mechanics on your cars, where you could buy different parts and so forth. The more races that you won, when you got money and so forth, you could actually add upgrade features to your car to actually improve the handling aesthetics and your overall speed, so you could actually win races a lot easier. And again, this was a thing that you would actually have to do, especially if you wanted to see results or see major progress throughout your playthroughs and so forth. But again, it was a fun way to play the game, and it kept you actually playing for more. Again, now compared to Ridge Racer, because as this is a wee bit slower to start off, the tracks are definitely a lot longer, and it takes a lot longer to actually get through the races, as you can see, because the cars and the overall gameplay is generally a lot slower to begin with. But it's still an enjoyable experience. I remember actually when I first seen this game, I actually seen it in an advertisement for one of the gaming magazines I used to collect way back in the day. And sure, back then, anything to do with the PlayStation, you were just all ears pretty much, and all eyes on the magazine pages to see what was coming out and to see what was popular at that time. And how I seen it was advertisements within the magazines themselves. And I remember seeing a full page kind of spread on an advertisement for this game. And I remember saying something, I can't remember exactly what it said, but it was reminiscent of Ridge Racer. It did mention kind of like a Ridge Racer beta or something like that, and advertisement from what I remember. and looking at it looked very, very like it, as I said. So it was interesting to see. But now I'll admit, even though it looked really cool in the advertisement, I still didn't get to actually experience or play the game until a good few years later. The reason being is because it was actually a very hard game to actually find. I do actually remember going to Dublin. I would always go to Dublin a couple of times a year whenever I would have enough money saved up, and I'd literally just go on a spree and just buy a few games myself and my brothers and my friends and stuff. We'd go up a couple of times. We'd all do the same thing. We'd be saving up money for months so that we could have enough to actually go and buy a few games. And I do remember particularly looking out to see if I could actually find this game. Now, for me at the time, it was not a necessity. Like, if I could get it, I would have bought it. I think I did see it somewhere, but it was way too overpriced, because the game, I do remember, had been out a year or two and they were still looking like full price. Some places were actually charging more for certain games compared to other shops, and it was just way beyond my price point at that time, so I ended up not getting it at that current time. And even at that, there was only a handful of shops that actually would get it or had it, but again, it was a bit too expensive at that point in time for likes of myself. So after that, and after a while, you found that the game just became more rare as time went on, so it actually became very, very hard and difficult to find. It wasn't really until later years with the likes of eBay and so forth that came out that actually you were able to get your hands on some of these games. Now, some of these games you would pay quite a bit of money, and depending on the condition, you'd probably pay a wee bit more than most. So that's eventually how I ended up getting my hands on this game, because I went through a period about 10 or 15 years ago, a little bit less, where I did actually go through a spree of really buying back a lot of the old games, and even trying to buy a load of the old games that I actually wanted to play back in the day. I literally just got addicted to buying games on eBay and just experiencing the PlayStation 1 all over again, and literally just going back to playing all these type of games and experiencing ones that I'd never gotten to play that I'd always wanted to play. Like, kind of like what I'm doing, like in this, with these videos that I'm doing, because I'm using these videos as a way to try and allow myself to get back into these type of games and even explore and even share my memories of games, even of games that I have played in the past, but also to experience new memories and to explore games that I never got the chance to play. So this here is a prime example of that. And I do remember actually getting it on eBay, and I actually played it for a good while, and I was like, you know what, this is very like Ridge Racer. But at the same time, it was very different because there was a lot more involvement in it. It wasn't just a case of just going in and just jumping in and doing a race. You literally had to go in and actually upgrade your cars, and depending on different scenarios or courses, it could increase the difficulty and so forth. Again, like Ridge Racer, it had a limited amount of tracks, but again, it would increase in difficulty and branch out eventually to different areas depending on areas that you unlocked. As you can see in here, you would earn money then or points for completing races. So obviously the higher your rank, the more you would actually get. But it's still enjoyable, and it kept you playing for a while. So I actually really enjoyed this game, and like I mentioned, it was a good teaser into the likes of the world of like racing, like in like Japanese type of racing, like with these type of games, because these type of games were very few and far between back in those days. They were actually hard to find, because you never seen too many of these games outside of Japan, unless you managed to have, like, say, a modified PlayStation where you could import games back in those days. But now at recent times you do have access to a lot of these. So I will be actually covering more of these type of games, because there is actually a lot of racing games that I've actually found recently over recent years that actually were released in Japan that never got released, or even in other countries that never got released in Europe and America and so forth. So I will definitely be playing them and sharing them with you all as well, because they're definitely worth talking about, and some of these games are actually really, really good, and it's a pity that they weren't actually released in likes of Europe and so forth. But again, at least now you can get to experience them. So I'm going to try and make as many videos as I possibly can in the future, showcasing these games, and then just, like I said, just showing and sharing my memories and experiences with these games, and showing them to you, see what you think of them as well. So that's it for this video now of the Tokyo Highway battle. And at least you know now what the types of these type of racing games are generally like on the PlayStation, and how enjoyable they can actually be. So if you have enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like. Also hit that subscribe button and hit the bell icon to be updated of future videos, as I am going to be releasing more videos on more racing games and just overall different types of games that were released on the PlayStation, and just share my experiences with them. So again, as always, make sure to keep playing those classic games and share your experiences. And make sure to let me know your experiences by leaving comments down below as well, because I'd love to hear your stories. And again, until next time, make sure to keep those gaming memories alive.